that's the ethos here.
Yes.
I don't care about anything else.
Yeah.
The engineering has to be fantastic, the styling has to be beautiful and timeless, and the car has to be the best car on the planet to drive, full stop.
Hi, so guys, I have a really important message, and that is for number one to say thank you to all our new subscribers. We're currently at 85,000, I can't believe that, in a year, but we would love to get to 100,000 by Christmas. Our plans for 2023 are unbelievable, and without those subscribers it wouldn't be possible. I mean, I can't believe the people that we've already interviewed, the cars we've already driven, the places we've already been, but we want it to be bigger, we want it to be better. We're going to go worldwide, but we need you to help us to do that. So please, please, please do hit that subscribe button and bring on 2023. Anyway, love you all. Bye. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Kid in a Sweet Shop. So today we're talking to another hero of mine. So he started life in South Africa and then went on to become technical director of two of the most successful F1 teams ever, helping them win between the two of them 5 World Constructors' Championships and over 50 Grand Prix wins. He also is well known for designing the best road car in the world, and also this beauty, which is the Mercedes McLaren SLR. And thank you very much to Premier GT and A-Plan for loading it to me today. But let's go and meet the main man himself, Mr. Gordon Murray. Gordon Murray, it is such a pleasure. I mean, I've known you for quite a few years now, but such a pleasure for you to join us to have a chat with me, because you've been one of my kind of all-time heroes. And to be able to, I want to find out, you know, how it all began. How did, you know, this genius kind of technical genius come to, that we all know, but where did it all start? Obviously brought up in South Africa.
Yeah, Durban, South Africa, and it was really from quite an ordinary background and an ordinary beginning in a way. I was born in '46, so literally just after the war. My dad had been away for 4 years in the war.
Right.
And I was born after he came back, and my dad was a motor mechanic. We were sort of working class, I suppose, in those days in South Africa. And he was just mad on racing, so he used to race motorcycles before the war.
Okay, so motorcycles rather than cars.
Yeah, motorcycles, yeah.
Right.
And then, so I grew up in a sort of racing household, if you like. I can remember as early as 5 years old being taken to racetracks. We had like a poor man's Monaco in Durban. We had a round the houses race along the beachfront.
Oh, brilliant.
And I've got pictures from me there, I think in 1951 when I was 6. And there wouldn't be a month go by where we didn't go to a speedway event, a hill climb or a circuit race or something like that. You know, so I grew up with racing in the blood, and I really never wanted to be anything else. From 6 years old, but a racing driver. I didn't know about design then, of course.
Right, right.
However, growing up, my mum told me that I got quite inventive at a very young age too, because we lived in a tiny rented flat. My mum and dad never owned a house. And there were 4 of us living in one bedroom, so it was really a living room, a bedroom, a tiny kitchen and bathroom, that was it.
Right.
So I had to entertain myself, and I used to build spaceships and submarines and tanks out of the chairs in my mum and dad's bedroom, and then charge the other, with sound effects and things, with blankets over the chairs, and charge the other kids in the neighbourhood for rides. So I was quite inventive, I suppose, even at that age.
Unbelievable.
And then I grew up making soapboxes and making. My dad used to make all my bikes. I never had a bought bike.
And did he have, where was his workshop? Was it
So
kind
he
of
worked
within the house?
in a service station. No. He worked in a service station about 2 miles away.
Okay.
As a mechanic, basically. And so I grew up in that atmosphere, really. And then at 16, my mum didn't want me to have a motorbike. I was a bit of a lunatic on anything I was on, soapbox racing.
So you were a bit of
I
a
used to race
speed demon.
everything I could get my hands on, push bikes, soapboxes, from sort of 8 to 16.
Oh,
I
my
used to race
goodness.
everything.
Okay.
And being in Durban, I was a surfer as well, so I used to surf every day.
Amazing.
And then my dad bought me a non-running, 10 pounds worth, I think it was, Maserati 50cc motorbike. Wow. So I had to rebuild that and rode that, and I got
so literally rebuild
even
the
more
engine.
into speed. Yep, everything. Yeah.
And this was the first time you'd ever kind of yourself got the engine,
Yep.
took it apart,
Engine and gearbox.
and
stuff,
you just kind of, did you just understand it? Is
Yeah,
it
I've
just
been
like
around my dad a lot. And of course, my dad was always working on cars and always had
And
an
showing
interest
you
in
and-
cars. And that mixed with the racing background and wanting to go fast, although those things were 3.5 horsepower, I think, but they didn't go very fast. It felt
downhill,
fast. It felt fast.
wind
yeah.
behind.
Yeah. So that was the background, really.
Yeah, and then from that, from 16, where did you progressed into kind of furthering your passion as a racing car driver? So you went
Yep.
from the Maserati into...
Well, yeah, at 18, I started driving normal
Yes,
cars. And of
yeah.
course, the first thing you do in those days is soup them up and make them go faster
Yeah.
and lower them and all the usual stuff.
Oh my God,
But
brilliant.
I was desperate to actually go racing, and it looked like the only thing that could be affordable was go-kart racing.
Okay.
But that was quite new then,
Yeah.
in the early 60s. And by the time I'd got plans and regulations and all that sort of thing, I was getting to 17, and at 18 I could start racing proper cars.
cars.
So I dropped that idea,
Yeah.
and I started designing my own racing car when I was 17. And I was able to do that because I didn't go to university. Thank goodness I didn't go to university.
You didn't,
I
okay.
wouldn't have got the practical knowledge. So I was doing a 5-year apprenticeship as a designer, a draftsman, technical draftsman, with an engineering company.
So you knew you were good at doing pen to paper as well? And
Yeah, that
you-
all developed around that time.
Right.
Yeah. And then at school, I'd always been in art, because unusual for an engineer. I'm a terrible artist, but I do art. I do paintings and drawings and sketches. So I had enrolled. I did art in secondary school,
Okay.
and I had enrolled in high school for art. But luckily for me, even though it was a massive government school, where
Yeah.
people normally didn't care,
Yeah.
one of the teachers in secondary school wrote to my parents and said, "This guy fills his art book with drawings of racing cars,
Cars and-
suspension,
Yeah.
electric guitars, and we think he should do technical drawing."
Really?
So I had already started enrolled in high school, I beg your pardon, in art. So I only did a month of art, and thank goodness I switched to technical drawing.
Right.
And it's the same time, after leaving school, around that period, I was really getting into wanting to drive racing cars, even while I was still at school. So
Can I ask, whilst you were at school doing this technical drawing, was there a teacher that was kind of inspiring to do it? Was your dad inspiring you to do it? Where did all of those?
Definitely. There was a teacher, just from the drawing point of view,
Yeah.
we had a fantastic English chap. Can't remember his name now, but anyway, he actually, really got me into the act of drawing, the art of drawing, if you like, which I still do today. I still use drawing board today. And my dad, at the same time, of course, I was still going to races and stuff. And by then, when we got our own cars, at the end of school, we had our own cars.
Yeah.
We were driving to Kyalami to watch the Grand Prix in the 9 hours and all that sort of stuff. So it all happened at the same time, really, because it was all around 17, 18, 19. And I had no money to buy a racing car, so the only way was to build my
build it.
own. But I had been doing this apprenticeship, and at college I'd been doing thermodynamics and engine design. So I was an engine designer,
Okay.
not a chassis designer.
Right.
So I sent off to the UK for the only book on racing car design that was available then by Costin and Phipps. I've still got
You
it.
still got
I've
it?
still
I was
got
about
it.
to say, brilliant.
And I got that book, which showed you how to do suspension geometry.
And that was the beginning of...
Yeah. And I designed and built T1, which was my racing car, and raced end of 66 for the first time, I think, 67, 68 seasons, with some success.
Yeah.
Won some races, won some hill climbs.
And I heard you were either kind of one or the other. You were either winning
Oh,
or...
yeah. I've Red Haze, I think, yeah. I don't think I ever came second.
No, okay,
I either
that's
crashed
brilliant.
or won my class. Yeah.
Okay.
And I crashed in a few hill climbs
Either
too.
D and F or
Yeah,
first.
absolutely. So, and then after a couple of seasons, I thought, you know, I'm really into the design. I love racing, but I'm really into the design side. I love the design side.
Yeah.
And South Africa, to be really blunt, was a bit of a dead end. The colonies then was, you know, and it was quite, the culture out there was quite sort of inward thinking, if you like. So I wanted to get overseas.
Yeah.
My other love in life is music. I was 50% racing, 50% music.
Did you play?
And I played a little bit of guitar then. I had a band later in the 80s.
Did you?
We were rubbish. So really, that was the South African years, and I decided, you know, the centre of the universe for music and racing was the UK.
Really, was London? No, you didn't want to go to Italy.
So,
you didn't want to. No.
Not at all. It was all about the UK. And in those days, people didn't travel. You know, especially young people didn't travel 7,000 miles away. I didn't know anybody in the UK. I wrote to Colin Chapman at Lotus.
When you were still in
Still
South
in
Africa?
South Africa,
Okay.
because he was my childhood hero.
I mean,
You know, road
isn't he
cars
just-
and racing cars. I loved everything he did. I was
Hero.
dying to own a Lotus Elan in those days.
Gosh, I know.
And I got a pretty positive letter back from a chap called Brian Luff about getting an interview when I came over.
Oh, fantastic.
So I sold everything I owned, got a ticket on a cargo boat because I couldn't afford
boat.
anything more than that.
And what were your parents thinking? Were they really like pushing you?
My dad
or-
thought I was mad,
Yeah.
completely mad, you know, spending all my money on building a racing car for a start.
Yeah.
And secondly, then
How
selling.
could he say that though?
Well, he was quite, you know, my parents were sort of war parents, if you like, and they were very careful with money and
exactly.
borrowing and all you know, that sort of stuff. So my dad thought I was crazy just spending all my money, firstly on a racing car and secondly going overseas. And of course my mum was very encouraging about my future generally, but she didn't want me to leave home.
Yeah, you're a little baby.
So,
Like, oh no.
so anyway, I sold everything. I was 22 or something, I think, and got on a cargo boat and arrived
So brave.
over here
So brave.
with nothing, basically.
And what literally landed at where did you come into Southampton?
So we were supposed to come to London docks, but the boat broke down in a storm and went
my
backwards for
God.
3 days towards the Portuguese coast with Mayday signals and all that stuff going out.
Holy moly.
Quite exciting.
my
Force
God.
9 storm.
You're joking.
And then so we were a week late because we had to stagger the last, you know, from Portugal
Yeah.
to here on one engine.
Yeah. Oh my God.
And so we got in a week late and we landed at Southampton.
You did. And literally coming off the docks and just went,
Yeah, I had nowhere to stay.
so you just said, right,
Yeah.
let's get
It
to
was in the
London.
middle of, it was January, I think.
Oh, freezing.
Absolutely freezing. And
I
I,
bet
had,
you were like-
I had a lightweight jacket, but I was so excited I don't remember being cold.
And you got to London and then,
I got to London. I phoned the one person I knew who lived in Hendon, who I'd known in South African days, and went and slept on the floor the first night.
did you?
Until I could, the next day I went and looked for rented accommodation.
Okay. And then rented and went when
Shepherd's Bush, £5 a week. Yep, no heating.
good old Shepherd's
no
Bush.
kitchen, no bath.
And
Bit of
then
a shock after South
bit
Africa.
of a shock, I bet, coming in January as well. And then went off to see Colin directly?
I did.
or-
I went straight to Lotus.
Yeah.
I hadn't really followed up. I think 3 or 4 months before I left South Africa, I hadn't really followed up my initial
Yeah.
inquiry. And I didn't know there was a mini recession going on in the UK.
What year
And
was this? This would have been...
70,
Oh, okay.
early 70.
Yeah, okay. It's
And
tough times.
I went up to Lotus, January 70 actually, and
And they
I
were
got
just-
there and Brian Luff saw me and he said, haven't you looked out the window? Haven't you read the papers? You know, we're in the shed. All those cars out there are unsold. We've just put 30 people off. We're not hiring anybody. So that was the end of my Lotus dream.
Oh my God! And then where from there?
Well, I tried for 6 months. I could have got a normal job, but I was desperate to get into some sort of car design. I didn't even consider high-level racing because I thought with my level of experience and my age, that all would be against me. So.
And you wanted to go into racing rather than road cars?
I would have loved to go into racing, but I didn't dare go and approach racing teams because I thought I was too inexperienced and too young.
Yeah.
So I approached people like Ford, as a designer.
As a designer.
Yeah, to get a job basically, to earn money. And then I hoped to drive after that.
Okay.
And, you know, I was going to people like Ford and the aircraft companies and things like that.
Yeah.
And I'd been like sort of 6 months without any work.
Feedback.
And by that time, I just got married. So I got married with no money, no job.
Oh my goodness! Take me back. So how did you meet your wife in between this time of not having a job?
I had been going in South Africa. I'd been going steady. We called it then.
Okay.
Showing my age now.
Yeah.
With a girl for 2 years, and she came from a very wealthy family, and I came from completely the other side of the tracks.
Yeah.
And I said to her, "Look, I'm off. You know, I'm selling. If you want to come with me, that's fantastic." But her father was very wealthy. Didn't like me at all.
Yeah,
at all. You know, but I never wore shoes. So barefoot, long hair, racing driver, surfer. You know, silly shirts. I wasn't popular. His mum loved me, but her dad, no. So anyway, so it came down to a bit of an all-night sort of. This is only with a couple of months to go before I left. It's your dad or me, and she chose her dad. So I had my little black book wasn't working anymore because I've been going steady for 2 years.
Yeah.
And my brother had started. He was older than me. And started an advertising agency in Durban. And I said to Terry, all the girlfriends, when you phone them up for to go to a party or dancing or whatever, they're all
they're busy,
steady or married or busy. And he said, "Oh, we just got a young artist that started with us, and she's down from what was then Rhodesia, from Zimbabwe, and she doesn't know anybody." So I went on a blind date, and I think we went out half a dozen times, and then I left.
Oof.
And I'd been in England 6 months, and she fundamentally, because she was from quite a well-to-do family too, she sort of eloped.
She just went.
Came over, and we got married about 3 weeks later.
Oh, I love it. And you're still together?
Yeah.
Oh.
So that was a strange one.
That is amazing. Okay, so at least you had some kind of support there, and you had.
Yeah, the first 6 months I was on my own, and then Stell came over. Yeah.
How lovely. Where did you get married?
Kensington Church.
Yeah, gorgeous. Oh, brilliant. So, okay, so
the
got married.
The wedding cost 14 quid.
Was it? You went crazy. So newlywed, how did you get to, obviously then the next thing that I know is being at Brabham. So how did Brabham come about?
That was pretty much an accident, to be honest. Yeah, I applied for a job. Ford, this is after the GT40 at Le Mans. Ford wanted to go back to Le Mans.
Yes.
And they had Alan Mann Racing, who were a Fairx aerodrome just down the road from where Brabham is, and now McLaren, of course. And they were advertising for a designer to do a new Le Mans car for Ford. I think it was called the 3L or the F3L or something.
Yes.
And Len Bailey was the main designer, and they were advertising. So I saw the advert, and I shot down there, got an interview, and Len said he was so undecided. I showed him all my drawings, my calculations, and for this car and the engine, my work on engines and things, and he seemed to be reasonably impressed. But he said, "Oh, I'm not sure we can." He kept flipping between, "We really need somebody," and "We're not sure," you know, and he said, "Let me think about it," and he took my number, and I'll give you a call.
Messing about a bit. Yeah. Okay.
Anyway, called me back again, and it was the same thing. It was like, "I'm not sure," you know. I don't know whether he was trying to push the price down or something. I would have worked for virtually nothing.
Yeah.
Anyway, while he was out of the room, an old boy in the corner on a drawing board said to me, he can't make up his mind, you know, he's always going to mess you around. I believe Brabham up the road are looking for somebody.
You're joking.
In the design team. I promise you. So I walked over to Brabham.
You walked?
And I didn't have money. I was right down to my last 15 quid or something then, I think.
Goodness.
And walked over to Brabham and knocked on the door, and I said, you know, I believe you're looking for somebody. And the receptionist showed me into a little office. Ron Tornak, who was the designer then with Jack. Jack was still driving then, actually.
Yes.
And Ron interviewed me, had no interest in my academic qualifications, my engineering diploma at all, but he was very interested in the fact I built my own car, raced my own car, done the engine, done everything.
Yeah.
And I got the job. And then when I was leaving,
Amazing.
as I was leaving, this older gent had arrived at reception.
Right.
And he was the one for the
For the
interview.
job?
Yeah.
You pinched it.
That's exactly what happened.
That is just brilliant.
So really just right place at the right
The
time.
universe was saying,
Yeah.
right, here you go.
Yeah.
So then started the next week and...
Yes, I started as one of 5 designers. There were 5 of us in the design office.
Okay.
And I started on smaller stuff like working on the Formula 2 cars, the Formula 3 cars, bits and pieces on the Formula 1 car.
Right.
But I was desperate to do a whole motor car.
Yeah. Because you had Jack that was obviously driving,
Yep.
I believe, for a year whilst you were there.
1 year.
How was it working with someone that was driving cars but actually also was very influential and big
Jack was
in
a
design?
fantastic chap. I mean, I got on with him from day one. He was such a gentleman. And he got more involved in the design than people actually give him credit for, I think. You know, he and Tornak worked together on the design of the cars.
Yeah.
And I got on really well with Jack. And quite soon, I pointed out a few things that I thought they would do wrong.
Right.
A 23-year-old or whatever I was then.
Yeah.
On the suspension geometry and the steering geometry and stuff like that. And I think they could both see I was,
Going,
you know, at a slightly higher level than they'd sort of employed me at. So I was hoping to get a design. In the meantime, I had designed and built the Mindbugs, our little sports car that we made ourselves.
Yes.
And I had started designing and building a little racing car for Formula 750 for me to race again. That was
And this was
1971.
So how were you running like a job at Brabham and
I
also
was
doing this
it
on
all.
the designs?
I've never slept much. I still don't sleep very much.
I bet.
4 or 5 hours is
Really?
maximum.
Your whole life,
Yep.
4 or 5 hours?
Yeah, and still. Yeah.
Incredible.
So I did a lot, you know, after hours, if you like,
Yeah, I bet.
designing these 2 cars. And then on top of that, I got approached by Alan de Cadenet
Of course.
to do the Group 5 Le Mans car, the Duckham's car for Le Mans 72.
Was this all within the first year or two, or the first year or
2
two?
years, yeah.
Wow.
The first 18 months, actually.
Okay, so it went from super
so
quiet to...
I was working, you know, 8, 9 hours, 10 hours at Brabham. I was designing the Le Mans car at night in an unheated, once again, an unheated apartment, flat, single bedroom flat. I was designing the Mindbug and building those on Heathrow Airport, and I was designing the T4, the little Formula 750.
I can't believe it.
All within a 12-month period.
That's extraordinary. Utterly extraordinary.
When I look back now, I feel tired now just thinking about it.
I mean, literally, unbelievable. And you got them all out, and so proud of all of them.
Yep.
And then carried on with Brabham, obviously, because then I think...
Yes, and that's exactly the same time Bernie Ecclestone turned up.
I was about to say,
Yep.
yeah.
Around that period, Bernie turned up. But it was all so shrouded. No, the communication was rubbish. You know, nobody knew if Bernie had bought the place or he hadn't bought the place, or nothing was communicated to us. And that's when Alan approached me, and I was actually thinking about leaving Brabham.
Were you?
And you
within
know, I thought,
the first 2 years?
Yeah, I thought if I do this Group 5 car and it does well at Le Mans, maybe I'd then go freelance or something and go and offer my services or something. I don't know. I was open to all sorts of ideas.
You were
At that
getting
age, you know,
offers.
that age you were,
Yeah.
you know. And then Bernie announced that he had bought the company.
Okay.
And around 72, 71, 70, beginning of 72, which was the Le Mans year,
Yeah.
I don't know whether, I still don't know, and Bernie he tells all sorts of different stories about why he did this, but he fired the other four.
Yeah, it was a big shake-up, wasn't it?
And just kept me, and walked in and said, "You're chief designer." And I think the underlying issue Bernie had was he's a winner. You know, he really is a winner.
Yeah.
He's a racer.
Yeah.
And we had a dreadful year because we were running these hodgepodge cars. We were running 3 different types of Grand Prix car. None of them were properly developed. A couple of them were too old, you know, and weren't competitive. And we're way down in the championship, just scoring, I think, 8 or 12 points in the whole season in 1971, I think it was, yeah. And Bernie had enough, you know. And he said, right, everybody's out, you're it, and I want a brand new Grand Prix car for 73 with the whole thing. Yeah.
So this was the first one you...
Clean sheet of paper. And he actually dictated, I don't want to use any parts from the old cars. I want a brand new Grand Prix car. So there I'm a 23 or 24-year-old, you know, having just built the Le Mans car. And then within a year of that, that was chief designer, and then he made me...
Were you allowed to have a team at this point? Or
no, there was only me, I had nobody else even drawing. So I was drawing everything, arranging the workshop, making sure the truck was packed, doing all the tests, doing all the aerodynamic work, and going to every Grand Prix and engineering 3 cars at the Grand Prix, the spare car.
You were doing the
everything,
3?
Absolutely everything.
So what would happen when a driver, if they
queued up?
They queued up?
Yep.
Oh my God.
It was mad. When I look back now, it's crazy, you know. And I got quite autocratic because of that, I think. So I didn't want anybody else, but I was driving myself into the ground. I had a complete 73. I think I had a complete physical collapse. Got up one morning and just fell over. Just the body stopped working, basically. Yeah.
And then what did you have to do? You just had a little chill out break?
No, because it was in the Grand Prix season starting again in 74, and I was doing another new car for that, the BT44.
So literally you had that afternoon off and then back to it the next day?
Virtually, yeah. So I was mad in those days.
I mean, it's extraordinary.
And then for around about 75, Bernie made me technical director, and I really did take over running obviously he did the business side.
Yes,
and I had Herbie Blash as a team manager, so he helped with the organizational side. But I took over everything technical in the business. So I was effectively running the technical side of a Grand Prix team at 26.
Unbelievable.
26, 27.
I mean, it's unheard of. Yeah. And then you obviously started winning, started doing good.
Yes, I mean the first Grand Prix car, the first race it went to, it led the race. Yeah.
There we go. Proof is in the pudding.
Yeah.
And then just, you know, because obviously those years at Brabham were extraordinary, and, you know, started winning lots of races. You had some amazing drivers. This was Nicky Lauda, wasn't he, towards the end?
Yeah. Nicky, Nelson Piquet. First 2 world championships with Piquet, of course. I even worked with Graham Hill before he retired.
Brilliant. Love Graham.
Very lucky. You know, very, very lucky.
So out of all of those wonderful years at Brabham, what would you say was your most favourite race?
I think winning the first... Okay, when you start as a youngster, as a racing car designer, first of all, you want to do your own car. So I got that opportunity.
Yes.
Then you want to win a Grand Prix. Then you want to win a championship. So those are the 3 big numbers, if you like. But I think winning the first race as opposed to the first championship was very special. Yeah. And it just so happened it was back at Kyalami, 74, and my parents were there.
Could make me cry.
And the last race Brabham won was 1970, Kyalami, with Jack. So it was home Grand Prix, my first Grand Prix car, with my folks. That was very special.
I bet they were so proud of you.
Very, very special.
Because did they come to the UK to visit often? Or?
I couldn't afford, and they couldn't afford it in the beginning, but from about the mid-70s,
I can just imagine that moment with you and Dad and Mum winning. Oh, gives me goosebumps. And so would you say from that would be one of your favourite tracks as well, or? It was
a great track. It was very fast. It was like a mini version of Spa, some really sweeping fast curves, you know. So I love open tracks. I don't like these modern artificial
twisty little turny
go-kart tracks. No.
And I suppose we can't really move on without talking about this famous car that's behind us, which is the fan
Yes.
car.
Yeah, that was fun.
Where was the inspiration for that?
You know, design is actually, I know it sounds boring, but design is solving problems. And
Yeah.
we had a massive, like Bernie, we were both incredibly competitive. I hate finishing second, and so did Bernie.
Yeah.
And Chapman and Peter Wright, in the late 70s, discovered what we now call ground effect.
Yes,
and they made these wing cars with a great wing profile down each side of the monocoque. Very narrow monocoque, big wings, and then skirts, and and the downforce tripled basically. At the time, we were running the flat 12 Alfa Romeo engine, and it was much bigger and wider than the little Ferrari flat 12. And where the cylinder heads were right where the diffuser, which is the bit that raises up at the back, had to be. So the cylinder heads would have been sticking into that aerodynamic space. I knew, even though the teams, myself included, were taking a little bit of a time to understand how a wing car worked. Once I did understand how it worked, I went to Bernie and I said, I've got some really bad news. With that engine, it's just not going to work.
Which is not going to be quick enough.
And this year is, and this year's gone, basically.
Right.
This season. And then I went back to the rule book and I had a long look at the aerodynamic rules, because I had an idea to. Chaparral did a very crude skirted car in Can-Am. Although to be fair, that wasn't the inspiration, but they were allowed extra engines. Can-Am had no regs really, so we couldn't do that obviously. And I thought, if we could seal the car and have a big fan, like a vacuum cleaner, sucking the car down, we don't care where the engine is.
Exactly.
But of course, the aerodynamic regulation said that anything movable, its primary purpose couldn't be to affect the aerodynamic part of the car. So I went to a lawyer friend and I said, what's primary purpose? He said, how many elements are there? And I said, 2. And he said, well, then it's more than 50%. Well, so I made sure that the fan pulled more than 50% through a radiator and 45% sucked the car down, and it was legal. And we went to the race and won it. So.
I bet you did. But it didn't last very long, did it? Because obviously
no, we withdrew it. Bernie was put under massive. Chapman could see his championship disappearing.
Yes, I can see.
Because we were a couple of seconds a lap quicker, and he could see the championship absolutely disappearing with Andretti. So first of all, he started spreading rumours about it throwing stones, which it never did. And Mario, he's a good guy. He admitted in an interview many years later that he was told to say that. Yeah.
Wow.
And then the second thing was that Chapman could just see the thing, his championship going. So he got the constructors together, and Bernie was just getting powerful then. And just looking at the bigger picture in Formula One, and with the Formula One Constructors Association getting stronger and stronger, and they wrote to Bernie and said, if you don't withdraw the CSI, who were the technical side of the FIA, had given us a letter to say we could run to the end of the season, and then they changed the regs, closed the loophole, and they wrote to him and said, if you keep racing that car, that's the end of the constructors basically. So we withdrew it.
Unbelievable.
I wasn't a happy bunny, as you can imagine.
You weren't. Because you built it, not only designed it, but actually got it. I mean, look at it, it's unbelievable. It's like a jet engine.
Yes.
And there's one thing I wanted to ask, kind of going back a bit or forward a bit, but your design process in your mind, where it starts to. Like I had a lovely, interesting conversation with Frank Stephenson, and he said he always draws with a Bic pen, and the design for, let's say, the P1 was from a leopard, or the new Mini was from a British bulldog, so he takes kind of like animal shapes and characters. Do you have anything like that, or is it just...
Yeah, stylists are funny guys. They always have a story.
Yes.
It's always a grandmother's hat or an animal or something. All stylists are like that. As I said a bit earlier, I think I'm quite unique because I do the styling and the engineering.
Exactly.
And normally you have, in any car company, you have quite a big fight between engineering and the studio. I've got to only argue with myself, so it works pretty well. So my process is very much hand, because I started in art and I do a lot of sketching. I'm very much like Frank, so I would always start with just ballpoint sketches.
Ballpoint
Although
as well?
not from animals and things, just from, I have an idea, because for me, car design, as opposed to styling, car design is packaging. It's all about packaging.
Yeah.
And I've always tried to think of the unfair advantage. In racing, it had to be something like the fan car.
Yeah.
With road cars, it's how can you make something better, lighter, more boot space, bigger fuel tank,
Yeah, it's got to be
squeeze
practical.
a V12 into this much space.
Yeah.
You know, it's that sort of stuff. And my ideas all start with those. Thinking, wow, if we did that, like 3 seats, if you put the driver in the middle and staggered the other people back with hips and shoulder distance, you could do a car the same width as a 2-seater, you know, that sort of stuff. And then I will do a lot of ballpoint sketching, and I write to myself. I've always printed rather than written.
Right.
And I will write myself pages. I just empty my head. So some of it's sketching, and some of it's writing the ideas and the principles I want to get across.
Yeah.
And then I put it all down, come back the next day and read it again.
Yeah.
And do some more sketching, and that's how it always starts. And
So it's
T50,
kind of a process.
same thing. Yep.
Yes.
But it's all about the package, really. I mean, car design for me is packaging.
Yeah.
Sure, you have to integrate styling and aerodynamics and stuff, but that's car design.
And do you see it before it's on the paper?
Absolutely.
Or, yes.
I've always had a great imagination.
Okay.
I can think in 3D, which some people can and some people can't.
Yeah.
You
No,
know?
I'm like that.
Yeah.
How incredible. So you see it and it's just like,
Yeah.
so it's just like magic.
Yeah.
I want to see you sketch one day. We'll get that on film. Okay, right, coming back to, you know, obviously coming to the end of Brabham, and then I believe that you were kind of a bit fed up with, you know, on the circuit.
Yep.
And you were like, you know, but you wanted to go and do other things. Mm-hmm. But you got a phone call from a certain Mr. Ron Dennis.
Yes. Ron, first of all, you're absolutely right. 17 years in Formula One, traveling, you know, all at months and sitting in an aeroplane and the pressure and also largely because I'm always looking for the next challenge, you know. And you start in Formula One, you want to do a car, then you want to win, then you want a championship. And when you've done more than one championship, you think, well,
Done.
You know,
I see you're a man of great tickers of boxes.
Exactly. Next challenge, please. And I thought, what about trying to do, you know, like a massively well-engineered road car for somebody? Or maybe I'd do one as a consultant and go work for somebody, you know, part-time or whatever. So that was it. Ron had already tried to woo me into McLaren in 1980-81. Mm-hmm. And it was just before we won the first championship, and then he came around to the house and had a big chat about, you know, I can give you shares in the business, I can do all this and all this stuff, you know. But I was on the verge. I built this team at Brabham with Bernie, and we thought we were on the verge of a world championship. We almost won it in 80.
Yeah.
We blew an engine and lost the championship in 80, otherwise we would have won it. And I thought, I can't walk away from this team. You know, all this hard work, I'm sure we could win the 81 championship.
Yeah.
And we did, of course.
Yeah.
And I said to Ron, no. And then he went and got John Barnard.
Yes, of course.
That was the first time. Okay. The second time, which is the time you're talking about, he just lost Barnard to Ferrari.
He left, yeah.
And he wanted a technical director to run the whole technical side, you know, chief design, all the rest of it. And I really didn't want to do any more. But Ron was very persuasive, as he can be. And I said, I'll only come if I have the same free hand I had at Brabham, where I'm in charge of everything. Design, testing, racing, race strategy, the lot. Otherwise, I'm not really interested. Building design, because they were in the middle of moving to Unit 21 in Shearwater.
Yeah. They are now,
and I wanted to redesign the design office, and I wanted to incorporate a test centre, and I wanted to incorporate a composite centre. And he said, anything.
Did they not have that though?
No.
How weird, because you would think that McLaren would
No, they did composites on the south coast. They had to put every monocoque on a truck and drive it to the south coast.
Oh my goodness. goodness.
We had an autoclave. We started carbon fibre. We didn't have a publicity department, so nobody knows, but we started carbon fibre 3 years before McLaren.
Isn't that incredible? I didn't know that.
We had our own autoclave, our own ovens. Anyway, so Ron agreed I could be in charge of everything technical, but I said the deal is 3 years. That makes 20 years in Formula One, and that's it.
Done.
That's done and dusted.
Okay.
And of course, it all worked out perfectly. 3 years, three world championships.
Spectacular.
Good way to stop.
I mean, unbelievable.
A lovely way to stop. Yeah.
And also, you got the chance to work with incredible drivers. You know, you had the
I mean,
Messiah
Ayrton and Prost. You know, it's funny because ever since then, people ask me, they say, it must be such a problem, you know, with two such strong drivers in the team. I said, but what a great problem to have. We were going to win every race if the car was any good.
If they didn't take each other out.
And the team was any good, yes. You know, so what a lovely problem to have. And I didn't have much problem managing them.
No.
You know, I got on very well with both of them. I got on very well with Ayrton in particular. He became a good friend in the end,
What a genius. Absolutely. And how would you work with a driver like Prost and with Ayrton? Would they, you know, obviously the feedback, and it's very important for everything, but would you kind of start designing a car for that particular driver? Would it be?
No, the design, that was the other way around, funnily enough, because the first car I did, the first year we did, I hadn't designed the car. A little group of people had done that for the year before, and that wasn't terribly successful. My first car was the 4.4, and that was pretty radical because it had a very extreme lay-down driving position.
Yes, of course, it was the one that...
And this is a really good point you make, actually, because when I spoke to Ayrton about it, and I explained the advantage of the reduction in frontal area and the increase in aerodynamic efficiency, he said, I don't care what position I'm lying in, if it's going to be that quick, Whereas Alan complained that it was uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And he wanted to sit up a bit. As soon as he could see that Ayrton was quicker than him, he quickly started lying down again.
I'm ready.
But it was a very radical driving position.
Oh my goodness! And so, I mean, what a wonderful privilege as well to.
Oh, it was fantastic. I really liked those. I missed the team at Brabham. The team we had at McLaren wasn't quite as gelled as the team we had at Brabham. Brabham was like a family, you know. But we had a lot of good people in the business.
How was it going from Bernie to Ron as kind of...
As partners?
Partners,
very different. I mean, very different. But the one thing they had in common, they were both very, very bright guys.
Super bright,
And Bernie gave me total freedom on the technical side, and so did Ron.
Yes.
And I think that's why we were so successful, because you know, if you've got somebody hovering around that think they know about engineering and design, interfering all the time
over your shoulder,
you're never going to be as successful as you could be if you've been left alone.
Yeah. And then so after your 3 years, super successful years at McLaren doing the F1, you then obviously went on to the best road car in the world. But how did Ron keep you in to do that?
That was a little bit of fate again, but it was also me looking for the next challenge, because it's very brave but also very stupid to say I only want to do 3 years, because after something as exciting and as challenging as Formula One, it's difficult to find something to replace that with. If you think
winning
about it.
every year and driving with the best drivers.
I know.
And just,
so,
I mean,
you know, about 18 months into my 3 years, I was already starting to think, what do I do? You know?
Yeah, exactly.
I've been very vocal about not wanting to stay in Formula One, but what do I do next? Yeah. And then I thought back to, well, after Brabham, I was thinking about doing a road car.
Road car, you said,
so I'd love to do that. And then the fortuitous bit, the fate bit, if you like, again. Yeah. We were stuck in the airport at Linate Airport after the 88.
Good old Linate.
89, 88. Italian Grand Prix, 88 I think it was, and it was all the directors together. We were waiting, so it was Mansur Ogier, it was Ron Dennis, Crichton Brown and myself. And Ron had been talking for some time about expanding the group, because we were quite narrow. We effectively had a tiny marketing company and a Formula One team. And Ron was talking about, you know, where electronics are getting more complex, we should start an electronics business. That was his idea. And Mansour Ogier had always wanted to do a supercar, a road car. He tried at Williams before McLaren, I think. So he was pushing for a road car. And as soon as somebody said that, and Crichton Brown, of course, wanted to do something with me because we were good friends. And Ron got onto the idea too. So the four of us, by the time we got back from Italy, we were going to start a car company.
That was it, on the plane?
That was it.
On the plane,
Yep.
all dealt with.
Yeah.
And then how the F1
Well,
obviously
my
was the
last
baby.
year, once again, I found myself literally, apart from I had Crichton by my side, but he was commercial, he wasn't technical.
Yeah.
So once again, I found myself, which I liked actually, all on my own. So during the 89 Grand Prix season,
Yeah.
we just finished designing the car for 90, so that was all done.
And that was the last year, was 90?
At 90, I stopped at the end of 89, but the 90 car I designed
Already
with
designed.
Neil Oatley. Yeah. And so that was already done, so I could walk away from that. And I missed a couple of Grand Prix, so I could start looking at buildings. And I once again walked into an empty building, did all the furniture, the pictures, the workshop equipment, built the team from just me.
This is to do the road car?
To do the road car.
Yeah.
Yeah. And basically it was a clean sheet of paper for the building design, whatever car we did, the team. I picked everything and everybody.
And it's a clean sheet of paper,
Yep.
and you basically said, right, I'm going to build the best road car in the world.
Yeah, I did.
Ever. I
Yeah.
know you did.
Yeah.
But this is the kind of mind
that sounds
set
terrible.
at the beginning.
No,
You did,
I
though,
mean,
you
that's what I
did.
said. I
Quite
said, I
right.
think we should start at the top. We should start at the
I've
top.
heard you went out.
Because after that, you can go anywhere. If you start with a little cheapy car, you can never go up.
This is Gordon Murray that was talking. Of course he's done. But I love this story of you going out, and I think you got an F40, Jaguar XJ220.
Yeah.
whatever it's-
959.
959. So you got the best
Bugatti
cars in that.
EB110. Yeah.
Brilliant. Best of the cars at that time. Took them out. Went like that, don't like that. That's good.
Yep. On the road and on the track.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
And then just got a feeler of what you
actually-
liked.
Not really.
Oh,
I
really?
wrote down what I didn't like.
You didn't like.
Yeah,
Okay.
that was an exorcism, I call it. So I wrote down, if you look at my notes, I think they're in the book. I wrote down everything I thought was bad about the car. I knew the good stuff. I
Yeah.
knew what the car had to be, but the cars were all. It sounds a bit big-headed, but the cars were all flawed in one way or another.
Yeah.
You know, for different reasons.
Yeah.
So I wrote all those down and said, right, we're not going to have offset pedals. We're not going to have bad visibility. We're not going to have turbo lag. You
Yeah,
know,
oh my God,
We're not
turbo lag.
going to have four-wheel drive. We're not going to have all the other things that wreck the experience, you know. And the F1 was much more about how can we make certainly the best engineered car ever, but how can we make the best driving experience? And you know what? That's the ethos here.
Yes.
I don't care about anything else.
Yeah.
The engineering has to be fantastic, the styling has to be beautiful and timeless, and the car has to be the best car on the planet to drive, full stop.
And that's what you created. And that's what you did create.
Yep.
And I mean, it's quite a big thing to say back then, right, I'm going to build a car that's going to be $1 million car. And, you know, those expectations were high, but delivered. I mean, were you quite shocked that, you know, that this car suddenly was worth 5 million and 10 million and 15 million?
Yeah, that is,
I mean, like,
I get asked quite often, you know, what did you think at the time? But you don't think at the time,
No.
you know. You just try and do the best you can,
yeah.
you know, with the design of the motor car. If it becomes iconic one day and starts climbing in value, I suppose it's something quantifiable in its simplest form. It's something quantifiable to the success of the motor car.
Yeah.
But you don't ever think about that when you're designing the car. You just try and do a good one, you know.
But when you were kind of like sitting, you know, years later going, ooh, you know, it's gone up. It's gone up. You must have been like,
I know.
so chuffed.
And they're still going up.
They're still going up, I know.
Yeah.
And then tell me a little bit more about the GTR, because that was revisiting Le
It was
Mans
another
again.
accident, actually. My life is full of accidents and fate,
Love
I call it. You know.
Exactly, sliding doors.
Yeah, it is a bit like that, actually. So that was, when I started designing the car, I sat the other directors down and I said, please, 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 I'm a racing car designer.
Yeah.
Do not ask me to design a car that could race one day, because in my head, I will compromise.
I'm driving it.
I'll compromise. I will. I'll
Yes,
think about
I
it.
got it.
If we went racing, we need the nose a bit longer because of the aerodynamics of this or that or whatever.
Yeah.
So they all went, oh, no, we won't, that's fine. You
Yeah,
just
yeah.
do. And actually, that was the right thing to do. What I didn't recognize at the time is I am a racing car designer, and I inherently built in all the things that make a good racing car. But I honestly didn't think about it when I was designing the car. And we came under pressure at the end of '94, end of '94, from two owners. First of all, Ray Belm, and then a little later, Thomas Boucher. And Ray can be quite forceful. And Ray said, I'm going to take this racing, And if you don't do a factory kit to go racing, I'll take it away and do it. So I went to Ron and I said, that's not good. Because if somebody else does it and does it badly, it doesn't reflect well on the motor car or us. So I had a minuscule budget. I got Jeff Hazel on board.
Yes.
Who had massive experience with customer racing, with Porsches and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And we sat down and we decided we needed a budget of, I can't remember, but it was a few £100,000, just to build a racing car.
Mm-hmm.
And Ron said to Jeff, how many do you think you can sell? And Jeff said 4 or 5. And he said, well, the profit on those 4 or 5 is your budget to design and build the car.
So you knew that formula well.
And one day in the wind tunnel.
Oh my God, it's unbelievable.
And we won the championship. And then, of course, we were under pressure to go to Le Mans.
Yeah.
And exactly the same cycle happened. We said, no, this is a 4-hour car, 4-hour endurance racing. That's, we'll have another kit.
Yeah.
So the same thing happened. They said, well, if you're not going to do it, we'll take it away and do Le Mans. And I went back to Jeff and Ron and I said, that could really reflect badly. So we should do a Le Mans kit.
You're terrible. I love it.
I think our budget to go to Le Mans was 750 grand. And as you know, we came first, third, fourth, and fifth.
Unbelievable.
750 grand.
But I mean, it's testament of what a car you actually designed, because you didn't do ginormous modifications. The car is...
It was a roll cage, a wing on the back, and a fire extinguisher, basically. There wasn't much more to it.
But that is just how brilliant that car is.
Yeah. No, it was fun. It was good fun to go there and trounce the prototypes. I mean, I lined everybody up before we left, and I said, wouldn't it be nice if we could try and win the GT class? Wouldn't that be nice? Or at least finish on the podium in the GT class.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Disappeared.
Unbelievable. I mean, that must have been quite a weekend. And then you went on to the SLR. Mm-hmm. This was the last project you did with
it
McLaren?
was.
Yeah.
It was, yeah.
And that was, you did it with someone else, because you didn't do...
That was a wacky one, yeah. First of all, it's the first car I've ever done where I haven't done the styling.
Yes. And
so that was entirely Mercedes-Benz. We did the aerodynamics on it, but we didn't do the styling. So we had to modify their show car quite dramatically to get the car stable, 200 miles an hour on the aero. And it was the world's first front-engine ground effect car, which is why the exhaust come out the sides, so we can have a flat floor and diffuse it. I've got mixed feelings about that car, because from an engineering point of view, I'm incredibly proud of it.
Yeah.
It's got one of the stiffest, strongest carbon chassis anybody's ever made.
Amazing.
It's got a very innovative hollow cast front engine cradle in aluminium, which nobody had done before. It's got quite a few firsts, but the biggest first was, up until then, you could only make about 30 carbon cars a year, and they wanted up to 700.
Whoa, okay.
500 to 700 cars a year out of carbon fiber, and it's a hand layout process. So we had to invent a brand new way of making carbon monocoques. They were robot bonded together. They had all sorts of innovative injected resin systems.
Brilliant.
And those two things are the things I'm mostly proud of.
Yeah.
It's not a sort of motor car that I would naturally buy and drive myself, but I'm really proud of the car. And to be honest, it's to drive it now, it's it's a fantastic cruiser.
It really is. What did you say it was when I got out of
A
it?
continent crusher.
Continent crusher. I think that is the
It is.
perfect explanation
It's
of
quiet, it's smooth, and it's got masses of torque. I mean, it's got a 5-litre engine
I know.
running at 1 bar boost on the supercharger, which effectively gives you 11 litres of torque.
It's just
So it's a monster.
It's a monster.
Yeah.
I mean, I loved it. I was very lucky to drive it
Yeah.
today, and I was like, "Woo, hello." Okay, so we put to bed the McLaren and the McLaren days, and 2007 you decided to do Gordon Murray Design.
Yep.
I mean, were you already thinking of this many years before, saying, "Do you know what, I want to"?
I was about to leave at the beginning of the SLR program.
Okay.
So to get the SLR program, I had to travel to Stuttgart for 6 months every week.
Yeah.
And once again, it was a bit of a one-man band. You know, we had a very small team left because we had to get down to absolutely minimum critical mass because we didn't have any work until we got the SLR program.
Yeah.
So there weren't many of us, and it was hilarious because the Mercedes, I've never worked directly plugged into the belly of the main mothership before.
Yes.
It's always been a little peripheral, like BMW. We worked with M Sport,
Yes, they're a bit.
which was only 180 people,
Yes.
one person in charge.
Yeah.
With the SLR program, bang, right in
Wow.
the middle of Merck, you know.
Yeah.
So they said, right, this week, we'd like your aero expert team to come over and talk about aerodynamics. So that was me. The next team, we want somebody to come and talk about interior design. That'd be me. Passive safety next week. Oh, that'd be me. So
Oh
6
my
months I
God.
went over every week. But we got the job.
Brilliant.
But to answer your question, I was already thinking about leaving.
Yeah.
And I had this idea, because I've worked in structural composites all my life. They fascinated me. We did the first composite rear wing in '74. We had carbon brakes on Formula One cars in '76, 6 years before anybody else.
Yes, you did.
We had carbon in a monocoque in '78, 3 years before
Yeah, you
McLaren.
did.
And the world's first carbon road car with the
The
F1.
F1. Yeah.
So I'd been thinking, you know, is there some way you can have a honeycomb composite panel, whether it's carbon or whatever the fibers are, that you can make quickly and at low cost for all the cars that we drive. And I thought I had an idea, and I put it to the board, and they were going, no, I think we'll keep making sports cars and things, you know.
Really.
I was the only one interested in it. And I was just about to leave and start in about year 2000,
Yeah.
and we won the SLR contract. And I thought, I can't walk out on that because I've done all the work. I've got the car in my head. You know, I need to lead the engineering for the business.
It'd also be really interesting as well.
Yeah,
You know.
yeah. So I stayed for 4 years and did the SLR. And as soon as I'd finished the SLR, I left and set this up
And set this up. And then
and developed iStream manufacturing process.
and really straight off the back, that
Yep.
was your dream.
Yep.
And was that a
Went and got investment, and we spent 7 or 8 years developing that and industrializing that process.
and so the first car, the T25?
Yep,
And that was
little demonstrator.
Yeah. And then we've obviously kind of progressed into this beauty behind us, the T50.
Yeah, so this is a slightly different part of the business. With
This is-
the iStream element, Gordon
Yes.
Murray Technologies, we call it now,
Yeah.
that's still working on customer programs with electric cars and the iStream technology.
Got
We
it.
started an electronics business now too, so we're looking at electronic powertrains and battery technology.
Brilliant.
That's the
Future.
main part. This is the fun. This is much more about brand building
Yeah.
and having a bit of fun and showing people that we can still push the boundaries with technology. And of course, some of the tech breakthroughs go back to the other side of the business.
Yes, of
with
course,
materials
they're
and stuff.
gonna
It's
work
all, it
together.
all stays within the four walls, if you like.
And the T50 that I'm sorry I keep on staring at across your shoulder. I mean, this has very much got a lot of things I can see that are F1. You know, the central seating positions, the beautiful design, the simplicity, which is what I love. Is that you've built a modern day supercar that isn't, you know, intakes and wings and things and holes, and it's just so beautiful and so you, and it's jaw-droppingly gorgeous.
Thank you.
It really, really is. And a very exciting time.
You know, it's
Yeah.
lovely. And you're right, this is absolutely the F1. The same targets, the same ethos,
Yes.
just 30 years, brought up to date with 30 years of technology and systems and things, yeah.
And so what is the future?
So we have 7 principles that we stick to, and sitting on top of those is driving perfection. So it's all about the driving experience.
Yeah.
Whatever the motive power source is, you know, because we have a very short product cycle time, and because we're a very autonomous, shallow, structured business, if you like, from a management point of view, we should be, as the sea of electric cars
Yes.
swallows us up, we
Yeah.
should be the last V12 flag waving, because we can.
Yes.
However, as we have to go to hybrids, and we have to then turn to either electric or hydrogen for internal combustion engines, our promise to people is whatever we build, it'll be the lightest, best engineered, and the most fun to drive, no matter what's powering it. And that's our sort of mantra, if you like.
So exciting.
It is. I think we've got a product and platform plan out to 2035.
Okay. And you've got, I mean, it's just,
And
I
I'm
can't
already
wait.
sketching
Are you?
Project 3.
Because you've got a T33.
Yep, that
That's
was already launched.
That's
Yep.
already launched. Okay, that's very exciting. So you've already got the next one? on
Yes, the
paper?
next one after that.
Okay.
I spent between 6 and 8 o'clock this morning designing it, basically.
Were you? Oh, I really want to see it. Okay, so and then tell me about the other side, which is the Gordon Murray design, because you're moving to a different area, you're moving to a different part of the UK.
Yep.
And you're actually building the new, I would say it's a campus, right?
It is a campus,
yeah.
actually. It is, yeah. It's a campus for the whole group.
Yeah.
And another thing I've always loved doing is designing buildings. I've
Yes.
designed quite a few houses and things.
Yeah.
And I did the layout sketches for that 5 years ago when we were originally coming here to Dunsfold.
Yes.
And now we're going to Windlesham.
To Windlesham.
So all the original layouts for that building I did 5 years ago now.
And what is the kind of the difference? I mean, obviously, big differences, but between kind of designing a car and a building.
I think if you're a designer, I don't think there is any difference.
No.
The same process goes on. You know,
Yeah.
I've designed furniture, electric guitars,
Yeah.
buildings,
doing all that.
houses, engines.
Is it all modern?
Cars.
Is it kind of going to be crazy,
It's
or
not.
is it going
No,
to
it's
be?
not what I call show-off architecture. It's
Okay.
just clean, simple.
Yeah.
It's pretty, but it's just usable. You know, that's us.
Yeah.
We don't need to show off. You know,
No.
we just want a practical, lovely home. It's in an 18th century parkland with 200-year-old trees and lakes and things. It's beautiful there.
Oh, I can't wait. So we've got another year until moving in.
Yep.
And
Yeah, we'll be moving in about this time next year.
it's so exciting. Goodness, I'm sure that we've gone on for hours and hours and hours. So I just want to say thank you so much for talking to me. I'm so excited to see the future. I'm just looking at this car. I think it's absolutely beautiful. But we've got a little thank you for spending your afternoon with Kid in a Sweet Shop. So we've got a little present for you. And this is very much about the last car that you've designed. So anyway, this is a little present for us to say thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Can I have a look?
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, wow. Where did you find that?
We, one of our wonderful team members basically found
Fantastic.
it and just
Thank
thought it
you
would
very,
be
very much.
Quite.
And it's been a real pleasure. It really
Oh,
has.
No, honestly, you're just
That's wonderful.
such a hero. Brilliant. I'm glad you love that. T333.
I have to make sure that's on my car, I think.
You better. But thank you so much, my love. Give me a
Been-
little thank you.
Been a pleasure.
Honestly, it's just magic. But I can't wait to see this next stage. The future is bright.
Cheers. Thank you.